Everybody hear me? If you'd like to make a statement, please fill out one of the forms at the back of the room and bring it up here. And actually, Neil, I'll need those. Connie. Okay, I think we're ready to start. I'd like to call to order the Monday, December 4th meeting of the City of Monona City Council. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Alder Bernstein.
Here.
Alder DePula.
Here.
Alder Holmquist.
Here.
Alder Moore.
Here.
Alder Wood.
Here.
Alder Rademacher.
Here.
Mayor O'Connor.
Here. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, is there a motion to approve the minutes of the November 20th meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Any corrections or additions? Rick?
Amendment 2401 says motion by Alder Kula. I think that should be Alder Wood.
Yep. Thank
Okay. Anything else? All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is approved. Thank you. Let me just sort these just for a minute here. All right. Is there anyone who would like to make an appearance on anything other than the Madison Metro proposal? Okay. All right. So we are going to start with that. The next section is the appearance section. I just want to point out a few ground rules. First of all, everybody will be limited to 3 minutes for comments. We will not be getting into a dialogue. That's not how this works. It's basically just you make your statement, and that's the end of it. The council does not go back and forth with the individual residents. And just so you know, no decision is being made about this tonight. It's only a first read, so it's kind of the initial explanation to the council of what the Transit Commission, who's been reviewing this for almost 2 years, what they've decided and the rationale. So I will start. We have several, first of all, who have registered against, who do not want to speak. Beth King, Scott Kelly, Cindy Phillips. I'm not sure who this is, someone on Gateway Green. Michaela Kennedy, Sarah and Phil Mitten. And one more that is stuck. Nancy and Dennis Kugel have registered against. So the first one who would like to speak, I guess Alex and Rachel Kugel, if you'd like to come up and take a seat at the table here.
Here she's home with the kids, but
Okay.
someone's gotta come.
All right. If you
I
just state your name and,
Alex Kugel, and I oppose the Metro bus.
Sorry, can we get the address too, please?
5304 Maywood.
Thank you.
I just with the amount of kids, already traffic that comes through this town, I think pushing for a Metro bus to come through, how many times a day? 14, 12, is so unnecessary. I don't even think, if Madison's telling you it's saving you money, take that with a grain of salt. I think we should do what's in the best interest for Monona, not what's in the best interest for Madison. Safety of our children should be the #1 priority, and a Metro bus coming through this town will not be a safety for children. That's pretty much what I have to say. I just don't, the cons outweigh anything pro about the situation. There's nothing that's so positive in this or a good idea that outweighs all the negatives. So, thank you for your time.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is Caitlin B. who would like to speak against? So, Caitlin, if you could state your full name?
And your dress.
Caitlin Block, Monona. Do I have to say my whole thing online?
Yeah, the whole address.
You shouldn't have to if she doesn't.
Yeah, I thought we weren't doing
Oh, I
the
thought
whole
you did.
address
Sorry,
anymore.
my bad.
I mean, we have it.
Yeah, I know.
Okay,
I know
there we
you
go.
all know exactly where I
We
live,
don't
which
have it
is
actually,
great.
but,
Oh.
okay.
All right, I wrote my stuff out because I'm not good at remembering. All right, here to address the council about your review of the Transit Committee's proposed resolution. The Transit Committee did their job to recommend a transit proposal to the council. It's the council's job to now review the committee's proposal with an elevated perspective of all the city's interests and needs, and in doing so, ensure decisions represent the citizens of Monona. Throughout the discussion of the committee's Madison Metro proposal, there has been more documented opposition than support. The council received 312 Monona resident names objecting to 40-foot metro routes on residential streets west of Monona Drive, as well objecting to a change for our disabled and elderly who prefer their local service such as the lift. Our local low-income senior communities of Monona Hills and Monona Meadows each submitted letters of objection to the Transit Committee's proposal. The Transit Committee's own survey showed that more people objected to the movement of the Transit Committee than supported it by 26 clicks, I guess. The most profound statistic was that despite how widely circulated the Transit Committee's recent survey was, about 8,000 Monona residents didn't bother to take it at all, apparently not finding it relevant enough to complete. This data shows that the proposal on hand is not a fit for this community. Had this been a straight-up vote, the proposal didn't pass. In addition, the proposal as written is too vague and lacks critical details. The resolution itself should reference the essential details, like what exactly the route is. Name it in the resolution itself. The frequency and number of buses we should expect each day. For example, I think we're proposing a 14-hour schedule with a two-way route. Is that 28 times per day? Is that 14 times a day? I'm just curious, do you know exactly what you're approving? What are the types of buses that are approved? Do we want to have that in the resolution? What will the alternative routes be if the standard route is inaccessible? What exactly are the costs of any safety measures that may be installed, such as pedestrian lights or sidewalks on Winnequa? Any other unlisted costs, such as shelters or road wear and tear? And an assessment of the impact during Winnequa Elementary School drops and pickups, such as between about 7:10 a.m. and 7:55 a.m. and 2:30 and 3:30
If you'd
p.m.
like to wrap up in about a half minute or so.
Yeah,
you.
that's basically all I had to say. I would just ask that you consider not approving it now for that reason, so that it can go back to committee, and we can get teeth into a resolution before we're not sure exactly what we're voting on.
Thank you. Next up is Jerry Thompson. Oh, I'm sorry, he just wanted to register against. Yep. Don Keeler?
My name is Don Keeler. I'm a resident of Monona. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I'm here tonight as a Monona resident for 37 years, and I'm an advocate of keeping the current bus service that we have. I believe the current Monona Transit bus system provides a great service for our residents. The Monona Express route schedule makes several runs in the morning from 6:35 a.m. to 8:58 a.m. and in the evenings from 3:20 p.m. to 6:47 p.m. to downtown Madison, to the Capitol Square, and to all the hospitals and the UW campus. The Monona Transit accepts transfer riders from Madison Metro for 50 cents. However, Madison Metro does not accept transfer riders from Monona ticket holders. Throughout the rest of the day, the Monona Transit provides service through the Monona Lift that operates from 8:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. The Monona Lift is a route equipped with handicap accessible vehicles and designed to meet the needs of the elderly and the disabled, as well as the general public. Service is provided on a scheduled route basis with stops made at designated Monona bus stops. Many senior residents utilize this service to get groceries at the Metro Market, at Walmart, and the bus drivers even set the groceries off at their front door. Also, many seniors and disabled residents use this service for doctor appointments, hair appointments, or going to the gym to work out. In addition, elderly and disabled passengers with special needs may pre-arrange individualized rides to and from specific locations by making a reservation. In the past 5 months, while driving the bus, yes, I've been driving the Monona bus for the last 5 months, I've had the opportunity to talk with hundreds of riders over this time while driving the routes. Before I started driving the Monona Transit bus, I had no idea how unique and valuable this bus service is. Every rider I talked to, disabled individuals, minorities, students, middle-aged workers, and seniors, were very happy with the bus service and would be very disappointed to see it stop. Of all the riders I talked to, I never had any riders who had anything negative to say about this current bus service. Get this, as bus drivers, when we come back from making our rounds downtown, we have a designated route that goes through the city of Monona. But just for service purposes, we deviate from that route whenever we can, depending on the timing. We'll drop people off right at their block or even at their house. It's a great service, time permitting. This Monona bus transit system also provides free rides to Easttown shopping area to Woodman's Grocery on a monthly basis. This service is funded by the Monona Senior Center. Also, this service is also extended free for the less limited vision residents in Monona. The current Monona bus service is all about equity, equality, diversity, and service to the Monona residents, while providing safety to our children by not running unnecessary huge buses through our neighborhoods.
Mr. Keeler, your 3 minutes are up.
As I stated previously, I'm here from Monona resident, and I live on Owen Road. I had four grandkids, ages 6 and under. We watch daily. We enjoy our quiet streets. That's why we moved to Monona. This last paragraph, if the city of Monona would like to improve the bus service in Monona on the weekends, how about working with Madison Metro and have them put a couple of bus stops, perhaps on Monona Drive or East or West Broadway? Wouldn't that make sense, as they are already running those streets already? As a
Thank you,
Monona
Mr.
resident,
Keeler.
I want to thank the city council very much for your time. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Okay, next up is Bill Kogis.
Yeah, hello. My name is Bill Kogis. I live at 4910 Winnequa Road. And I'd like to start first off by saying I am not anti-mass transit. I think anytime we can move a lot of people, economically and environmentally soundly, we should do it. I also appreciate the council's stewardship of our tax dollars. If we can save money, we should do it. That being said, I don't think this is the way to do it. Running these big buses through the heart of Monona doesn't make a lot of sense when you consider the safety issues at hand. I live on Winnequa Road between Dean and Nichols. So you could say, yeah, this guy doesn't want buses going past his house. And I don't want buses going past my house, primarily for the simple reason that it's not going to be safe. I don't walk my dog in the morning around 7:30 when all the school kids are leaving their houses. Everybody's commuting, the buses are going down the road. It's not safe at that hour. If we run these buses 12 or 14 times a day, they're big buses. Winnequa Road is not wide enough. We have parking on one side, not two sides. If you get a couple of large SUVs going down the street at the same time, one of them's got to slow down to make sure there's enough room to pass. Stick a big fat bus in the middle of all that, we're going to have a lot of problems. There's a lot of pedestrian traffic. There's a lot of bicycle traffic on Winnequa Road. It's not going to be safe. I don't think the issue on Nichols Road is as bad because there's sidewalks, but once we get up to Pheasant Hill, no sidewalks, narrow streets, I think we have the same issues. So I am against this bus proposal simply for safety reasons. I don't think we need it, and I don't think we're gonna get a whole lot of riders, especially from the Winnequa-Toniwatha neighborhood. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, next up is Sarah G.G. Kelly.
Hello. Thank you. My name is Gigi Kelly. I live at 5103 Toniwatha Trail. We've been residents here for more than 30 years. We love the uniqueness of Monona. We are walkers and bikers and have enjoyed that, but have noticed increased traffic over the years, and especially adding the bike route, the bike loop, adding the Wildhaven Park. It has changed the face of our Monona experience, but it's still good. But ever since this proposal came out, I have questioned who we're doing it for and why, and I don't believe it is for the residents of Monona. I think it's to enhance Madison Metro. I don't believe it's for us. I agree with everything Mr. Keeler said, and I could not say it better than he did. I have seen the care that the drivers give and make each enhance the unique Monona experience. I've seen it, the bus drive up to Cops. I've seen the drivers help the people. I mean, up to Pick and Save or whatever it's called now. I've also been observing Madison city buses. They are empty. There are no one on those buses. And I can imagine that it would be the same thing here in Monona. When we have this unique community with our unique services, I'd like to maintain that, and I oppose, and I don't live on the bus route, but I walk those routes all the time. And I just wanted to come here and tell you that I oppose this, and this is my third time, and I have not changed my opinion. And I just drove the route, and it is not, on the way here, there's a lot of places where they're not sidewalks. I just drove on Owen, and where St. Stephen's is, and or where, I guess it's the name of it. There's cars parked on both sides. It's one lane to get through. And then you have to take that right-hand turn onto Pheasant Hill, and they'd have to go around the cars. And my dog groomer is over there, and there's oftentimes traffic on Pheasant Hill, and it's difficult to make a left-hand turn there. And so once there's a bus waiting to make a left-hand turn, I believe that it's going to back up traffic. So thanks for your time. Please consider the needs of the residents of Monona, not what Madison Metro. They came to us, I know that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is Grace Wenham.
I'm Grace Winona. I live in Monona residence, 4223 Winnequa Road. I am a Monona resident and a Monona business owner, and I am speaking today in opposition to the proposed Madison Metro bus service route within Monona, specifically the portion that runs along Winnequa Road between Nichols and Dean. I care deeply about this issue because I have young children, and as a local healthcare provider, I serve many children in our community. I voiced my safety concerns to the Transit Commission last year, specifically addressing the lack of sidewalks, bike lanes, crosswalks, and adequate lighting along the bus route. Having followed this topic closely this past year, I appreciated the Transit Commission acknowledging the safety concerns myself and many other residents expressed at that meeting. I appreciate the changes made that included more sidewalk portions of the route. I was concerned, however, that the 13th clause of the new resolution, do you guys have the clause in front of you? The 13th clause of the new resolution states that the commission was reassured that the proposal would not pose any increased safety risk to Monona residents because the commission had reviewed Madison Metro's safety record. With all due respect, the comparison of the safety efficacy of Madison Metro buses through the city of Madison is not equivalent to the safety of the buses through the streets of Monona. Safe Streets Madison, a part of the city of Madison's traffic engineering division, has devoted the time, resources, and research into making transit safer for pedestrians and cyclists in Madison. On a quick visit to the City of Madison's traffic engineering page, you will find many safety initiatives, including the Vision Zero project, which uses research and data to determine high-risk areas that could be earmarked for safety changes. Among these earmarked projects are areas that have precisely the same problems the Winnequa portion of this proposed route has, namely areas of transit that do not have infrastructure of sidewalks, crosswalks, and protected bike lanes. If the City of Madison is looking to improve the same problems we will have on this route, waiting for the safety infrastructure to be in place first would be the reasonable thing to do. I hope that the City Council will look into a different proposal that includes sidewalks along the portion and at the very least eliminate the curbside parking and make a protected bike lane in place. I would also like the council to please consider whether this proposal resolves the original concerns of the Monona residents. It is first noted in the resolution that the Transit Commission conducted a survey of Monona residents in May of 2021, which demonstrated, and I quote, demand for increased evening and weekend service transit. Yet the same resolution later states, and I quote, the commission determined that a weekday-only option would reduce the amount of bus traffic in residential neighborhoods during weekends and evenings. Essentially, the 11th clause in this resolution contradicts its first clause. I would ask the council to please consider this. If the proper safety infrastructure was in place, perhaps there could be a transit solution that satisfies both the safety of pedestrians and cyclists as well as the original wants of the residents. I really appreciate your time and thank you for listening to me today.
Thank you. Next is Molly Groupie.
I forgot my glasses. I was at meetings this morning. I'm Molly Groupie. I live at 507 Crosswoods Road. It's great to see everybody. Thank you for all you do. I know this is a very challenging issue and a challenging position to be in, so thanks for your time. I served as Transit Commission co-chair for all 4 years I served on the City Council. And across the board, the continuous message that we received and the constant refrain we heard from residents was access, access, access. More buses, more drivers, more daily loops, increased hours extending into the evening and on weekends, additional stops both in and around Monona, and bus passes that would transfer between Monona Transit and Madison Metro services. Until recent years, a transit option of this ilk was deemed untenable due to budget constraints and what I perceived to have been a lack of vision on the part of Madison Metro's former leadership team. But tonight, the proposed merger on the table would accommodate all of these pathways to access and would benefit often marginalized members of our community who don't own vehicles, who don't live within the boundaries of the existing Monona Transit service routes, and who work second or third shifts that extend beyond the city's transit system's current operating hours. So you talked about people who perhaps didn't bother to fill out the survey. Those people probably did not have access to the survey or were not receiving it via communication or whatever means they should have received it. While I'm extremely grateful for the positive working relationship of the City of Monona and First Student, all of that they've maintained over the past several years, I know coming into our First Student contract, it was sort of like a real boon to what was a dissolving, first contract. I'm so grateful for First Student and for the phenomenal drivers who have established themselves as truly trusted public servants. That's something we hear over and over. It's just how wonderful the drivers are in our current transit system. But it benefits no one to imagine that with constant driver shortages, limited resources to expand our own transit service, that we can possibly accommodate the demands of our residents within the constraints of our current express and Lyft options. If we truly anticipate that Monona can be a destination for all, both to live and to work, we must continuously strive to expand access to our city services, and we must take into consideration the voices of those who don't have the privilege of being here tonight to raise them in favor of this proposal. I urge the entire council and mayor to take into consideration and support tonight's proposed merger, and I thank you very much for your time and consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Wendy Way.
I guess I'll
Good evening. My name is Wendy Way. I live at 5003 Winnequa Road, which is near the corner of Winnequa Road and Nichols. I'm here to speak in opposition to the proposal to contract with Madison Metro because the proposal includes a plan to run these full-size buses frequently down Winnequa Road between Nichols and Dean. This is an area that's on the Lake Loop bike path, as you know, and it's also very heavily used and enjoyed by walkers and runners. The proposal as crafted acknowledges but then discounts the serious safety concerns that have been expressed publicly by scores of Monona residents, both in the public hearing as well as in the transit survey. The proposal states that safety is not an issue because Madison Metro has an exemplary safety record. But this is because Madison Metro buses typically run on streets that are sufficiently wide and that have adequate protection for pedestrians, such as sidewalks. The proposed C3 route that runs along Winnequa Road is extremely narrow, has one-side parking, no sidewalks, and there are no plans or stated budget to address these problems. Furthermore, the Madison Metro buses are significantly larger than those of the First Student buses that run along and will run along Winnequa Road more frequently. The proposal in its current form presents a serious danger to those who live in and or use this area of our community. I urge the council to reject it or, at a minimum, postpone approval until the safety risks along Winnequa Road are fully resolved. Thank you.
Thank you. And next is Addie Farber.
Hi, everybody. I'm Addie Ferber. I am a resident at 401 LaBelle Lane, and I'm also a member of the Transit Commission who's been working for the past 2 years on this proposal. So I'm speaking in favor of it. The purpose of the Transit Commission is to help people to get around Monona easier. And as Molly said, we've been hearing access, access, more service, more accessible services for more people across more parts of our community. So when 2 years ago Madison Metro came to the Transit Commission and said we could partner together and have 7-day-a-week bus service that goes from mornings through evenings, that allows people to connect to the entirety of our regional community at the same cost as what we're paying right now, I said, how can we make this happen? And I'm really proud of the work that the commission has been doing over the past 2 years to figure out that question of how to do this. Because we have listened to concerns from across the community and taken that into account and adapted and adopted different parts of this proposal to make it responsive to the community. I do want to bring up one issue because I know safety is a big concern. And the thought of big buses going down our small streets can be really scary. For me, however, I know that every one of those drivers is a commercially licensed, legally screened driver who doesn't have any issues with the way that they drive, and if they do, are not allowed to drive the bus. That I know a bus can take large vehicles off our roads and reduce traffic, as we can get many more people getting around our community in a bus rather than in individual vehicles. So in those regards, I think this will in fact improve the safety on our small roads. So in closing, I think the partnership with Madison Metro is a wonderful way for us to do better bus service to this community, improve access to transit services, and allow people in our communities to move around safer and easier. And I strongly support it and hope you do too. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to make a statement?
Can I make one more statement?
Who's that?
Something just to add on to what she said. I know that we have buses for the schools.
Ma'am, if you could please come up to the microphone.
And I didn't think about this, but I have often observed, because I'm walking my dog all the time, we have buses for the kids, but the number of people who choose to drive their children to school instead of putting them on the bus is ridiculous. And so I don't believe that people would stop driving their cars and start using the bus if they have the opportunity to use their car, because it's already been shown that they use their car, not the bus, in the school, driving their kids to school. So
Thank you.
I don't know if anybody else has seen the amount of traffic at school.
Thank you. Okay, folks.
Thanks.
Thank you all. In addition, we received some emails,
You want me to read those? I can just simply.
all right, if you want to read that, and there's one additional here too.
Just received through the city's website, we had several comments that were submitted. Opposed to Madison Metro was Cheryl Mahaffey at 177 Shadow Lane. Opposed to routes as presented, Jessica Barber, 4904 Winnequa Road, shifting the road off of Winnequa. Also opposed to routes as presented, Katie Schwinn, 4900 McKenna Road, opposed to the C3 route specifically. And Ms. Odelia Halstead, 4906 Winnequa Road, shifting the route off of Winnequa. In favor of the Madison Metro route as presented, Kai Richards, 4507 Oak Court, Molly Group, 507 Frostwoods Road, Garrett Grantsurf, 1308 Baskerville, and in favor of Madison Metro with alterations, Christy Goforth, 4515 Gordon Avenue, shifting the route off of Winnequa. In favor, but shifting the route off of Winnequa, Zudi Zabriskie, 5706 Tony Watha Trail, and one comment, just a general comment only, about coordinating the routes with zoning was Tanya Hamilton Nisbet of 5712 Winnequa Trail.
Thank you. All right, we will, if there's no one else who wishes to speak, we will move on from the public appearances portion. There is no public hearing, there is no consent agenda. Under item G, council action items, we have no unfinished business. Under new business, item 2A, consideration of resolution 23-12-2655, amending the 2023 capital budget to complete emergency repairs and replacement of mechanics hoist put forth by the Public Works Director, and this is started for immediate approval.
Thank you, Mayor.
First of all, is there a motion to take this out of order?
Motion to take this out of order.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Dan?
Thank you, Mayor. This received finance approval tonight as well. I'll be taking it to the December 6th Public Works Committee.
Could we please have quiet in the audience?
And with tonight,
Thank you.
I'll be asking for approval of council contingent upon Public Works Committee approval this Wednesday. Our hoist was inspected by the state inspector a few weeks ago, and it was deemed unsafe and taken out of service. I have a few pictures in the packet that'll show you why. If you see the cracking that's on the floor, it also goes underneath the bolt pattern, and apparently that's what makes the hoist unsafe and can no longer lift the vehicles. So I'm seeking your approval tonight to amend the capital budget for this year for the amount of $29,500. $27,500 of that will go towards the replacement of the hoist. We were originally planning on replacing that in 2025, but with the new concrete, it makes sense to bump that purchase up now as well. I have a proposal in the packet for you, for your review as well. The tax on there, we are exempt from tax, so we will not be paying that.
Will it come out of a variety of budgets,
Yes.
Dan?
Yep, the fiscal note that's included in the packet, we will be requesting $7,375 to be used from balances for the Tecumseh Bridge and Wall Repair Project that we just completed this past summer. And also the same amounts coming from storm utility, sanitary sewer, and water utility reserves. Finance Director Hotaker did review those accounts and feels there's adequate balances there that we could get some funding for. This hoist is used for lifting and repairing public works vehicles, police SUVs, lighter duty fire department vehicles, parks vehicles. A lot of our fleet is considered emergency response fleet. And with this hoist out of service, our mechanic doesn't have the ability to raise vehicles and do the maintenance. So we're seeking approval in one reading tonight.
Any questions for Dan?
I do.
Rick and then Patrick?
You're using reserves from the three water utilities, water, sewer, storm. How does this relate to that?
There's undesignated unreserved money in each of the utility accounts. And this money is pulling from those accounts.
Yeah, I know, I'm just wondering.
We basically decided that the hoist is used by those four general fund utilities, that they should pay for their share of this. Yep, that was the reason why we split it 4 ways.
Okay, so it's used for these utilities, service.
There's probably more general fund stuff, but in reality, we're just gonna charge them, that's what we.
Yes, the question for Dan. I just wanted you to explain a little bit that we have one mechanic for the entire fleet, and that mechanic performs about 90, would you say 95, 99% of all the fleet maintenance out of that facility, and that lift is used for all that. That saves us a bunch, because otherwise we'd be sending everything that needed a lift out.
Correct. We do have one mechanic for the entire fleet. He services vehicles for every department that we have. The only work that he does not complete is warranty work, where the vehicles go back to the vendor for service. The large fire trucks, the heavy maintenance items on those trucks, we do send back to the vendor for that. But all the preventive maintenance, all the simple maintenance on all of our equipment, Ron is the only one that does that work. I would probably say 90% of the vehicles, or 90% of the work is completed in-house.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Teresa?
And just a point of clarification, and he is not able to use, I mean, the hoist is not operable at the moment.
Right now, we don't have the ability to
You
lift.
just simply do not have that, right?
Yep.
How long will it take to get this?
We're having plans to take down the current hoist, shift it to the next bay, and temporarily install it there. The vendor that we're purchasing from, they are believing it's about 2 to 3 months out. So that'll give us enough time. The hoist is down already on the side that we have the faulty concrete. So once we get approval tonight and Wednesday at committee, we're going to begin removing the concrete. I think they're looking at somewhere around 2 to 3 months out to get the equipment here. Once the new hoist is here, the company will come in and install it. We'll take down the current hoist that we have, and we'll send that to auction once the new one's up and installed.
Any other questions? Brian and then Nancy?
You mentioned that the hoist is set replacement in 25.
Correct.
Can you speak to why we need to replace it versus what you're doing, moving the lift to a new bay,
Right.
re-putting the lift back?
Right. So the hoist, I think it was a purchase somewhere around 1996 and 1998, somewhere in that range. So the estimated age I have in here is about 25 years old. It's probably a few years older than that. When we bought the hoist, from what I'm told, we did not repair the larger vehicles back then that we do now. We have more larger vehicles in the fleet that we complete maintenance on in-house. So the hoist that we have is a narrow hoist. We don't have the ability to open the doors once it's in the hoist. So the plan would be to get it on the capital budget, like I said, in 2025, to buy a modern hoist, which is wider, and it can hold more weight as well. So it's just replacing an old hoist, and we'll have better capability to do more work with it.
Nancy, did you have something?
Yeah, I'm aware from my own cracks in concrete, if you will, that sometimes the cracks speak more to the failing concrete and what's under the concrete than it does to the actual thing that's sitting on top of the concrete. So, are we, in repouring the concrete, will we be shoring up whatever the footing, subfooting is under the concrete, so that because we are lifting heavier trucks and more vehicles, that it will stand the test of time?
Absolutely. We're going to cut to the limits of the crack, and we'll be doweling the new concrete in. We'll be repairing the base underneath, and we're planning on putting a thicker pad in place. It'll be a beefier all-around pad that's underneath that hoist. Yeah.
Anyone else? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Or I guess we should do a roll. Call the roll, I'm sorry.
Alder DePula.
Aye.
Alder Holmquist.
Aye.
Alder Moore.
Aye.
Alder Wood.
Aye.
Alder Rademacher.
Aye.
Alder Bernstein.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item under new business, item 2B, consideration of resolution 23-11-2658, amending the 2024 operating budget to allocate American Rescue Plan funds for employee retention payments put forth by the Finance and Personnel Committee is, well, we're not going to be voting on this tonight. So Leah, do you want to?
Thank you, Mayor. This resolution is a request to use American Rescue Plan funds to provide $2,500 retention bonuses to our full-time and permanent part-time staff. You all know you passed the budget at the last meeting, the operating budget. There was a 3% across-the-board wage increase for staff. The year before, staff received a 2.5% wage increase. The year before that, a 1% wage increase. We, just because of our financial restrictions and situations with levy limits, we really have not been able to keep up with the rate of inflation in terms of giving our staff wage increases. And we are seeing a higher employee turnover rate and a more difficult time recruiting new employees. So staff believes that a $2,500 retention bonus using ARPA funds would be a wise and appropriate use of ARPA funds. We have negotiated this into both recommended union contracts, which are also on the agenda for consideration tonight.
Questions? Anyone? Alder Bernstein.
Could we get something in writing that shows how we made that determination that ARPA funds are usable in this manner?
Yes.
Because I would like to see that as part of this resolution.
Sure.
Because you will be audited, correct, at some point?
Maybe, I'm not sure that
Oh, okay.
it's a federal program,
You're probably
so.
thinking of a single audit. We don't meet the requirement right now for a federal single audit, so you have to have, I believe, 850,000 federal aid. Currently, we do not. It has to be spent in 1 year, so we currently do not meet that requirement.
Okay.
However, this
But
is
the
what,
auditors do look at it, so, yeah.
this is one of the things that was included though, right, in the ARPA?
Yeah, we do fill a
funding.
report out. We have to explain what the money's for.
Okay.
So it has to detail it out. So yes, there's reporting.
I've only briefly looked at what I could find online, and I just don't see this as an allowable expense. But if you have, then I'd
Yeah,
like
we
to know
have some.
where you're pulling that from.
Yeah.
I know Middleton's already done it. I mean, a lot of the local Madison's done it, so.
Okay.
They've kind of changed the original restrictions in that law from what they passed to expand the,
Okay.
how you can use the funding over the past year or two,
just
I
that
know.
The city council believes it's an appropriate use, but I think I want to see
Yep.
something from city
Sure.
staff
We can get that. Yeah, no problem.
documents that.
Anything else? Okay, thank you. If there aren't any other questions, Leah, you might as well stay here. Next item, consideration of Resolution 23-12-2656, approving the terms of a one-year collective bargaining agreement with Wisconsin Professional Police Association / Law Enforcement Employee Relations Division, and this is also put forth by the Finance and Personnel Committee. Is there, again, we're not approving it tonight. Leah?
Thank you. We have a ratified agreement with the WPPA, which is our local police union. I will give you the highlights of the contract changes. This would call for a one-year contract effective January 1st through December 31st of 2024 with a 3% across-the-board wage increase and the $2,500 retention payment, as we just discussed in the previous resolution. The other really only financial consideration in this change in this would be a change in the current shift differential pay for officer in charge from 50 cents an hour to $1 an hour. That's fully supported by Chief Cheney based on the amount of responsibility that those officers in charge are given. We're also authorizing the chief, this contract would authorize the chief to offer a beginning wage for lateral transfer officers, so officers who we've recruited from other departments, experienced officers who are coming in, to be able to offer them a starting wage at the top of the wage scale to help better recruit new officers and fill openings. Just a language clarification on the number of arbitrators necessary in arbitration, and a language clarification that the officer's 18-month probationary period starts at the beginning of field training, and then some language clarification on providing 6-month written notice of retirement.
Questions? Alder Moore.
Yeah, actually, if you could go back to the being able to offer new officers that are making a transfer are you saying that they would automatically get the top, or that you just want the range to be able to go up to the top, depending on their experience?
That's correct. The contract currently gives the chief the discretion to offer an initial wage at the 25 to 36 month step. This would increase that to the 48-month step.
Got it. So we're not saying every new person that transfers would get the top?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you for clarity.
Alder, I'm sorry.
He has his hand up for a reason.
Chief, did you want to add something to that?
It's the cursor.
That's his cursor.
Okay.
Near his cursor right there.
You have a tiny little hand on the screen in front of your face.
I think that's Neil's.
I think Alder Holmquist is next, and then Alder Bernstein.
That was my question.
That was your question? Okay, Alder Bernstein.
I just noticed, and I'm curious, when it comes to the holidays, between the police and the fire, there seems to be a difference.
Mm-hmm.
Are you aware of that?
Oh, yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Is there a reason?
They're bargained and negotiated, and some are more important to some than others.
Okay. Just a matter of for negotiation. And the other thing with Article 24, bereavement, I noticed other parts of the agreement really try to be gender neutral, but that particular one is just is. So if you could go back and kind of edit that a little bit, be a little more gender neutral, I'd appreciate it. That's it.
Anyone else? Okay, we will move on. The next item, consideration of Resolution 23-12-2657, approving the terms of a one-year collective bargaining agreement with International Association of Firefighters, Local 311, also put forth by the Finance and Personnel Committee.
Yeah, thank you. This also is an agreement that has been ratified by Firefighters Local 311, very similar to the WPPA agreement in that it is also a one-year contract for 2024 only, 3% across the board wage increase, $2,500 retention bonus, and also in this contract, firefighters would receive 2 times their regular hourly wage for overtime hours worked on a holiday, not holiday hours, but just overtime that's worked on a holiday. And then an increase in their annual clothing allowance to $600 from $500.
Questions?
Yeah,
Alder Rademacher.
yeah. I think this is probably just me, and I just need someone to maybe translate what I'm reading. But I jotted down point number 21.5 and 21.6 kind of tripped me up a little bit here. So those would be on page 58 of the packet. And what I'm trying to figure out is the 21.6, employees working overtime on a holiday. It's not that I disagree, I just don't understand it. Employees working overtime on a holiday shall receive 2 times their hourly rate of pay for all overtime hours worked on a holiday listed in 21.1. So then I move up to 21.1, lists the holidays. And if you work that holiday, you get 12 hours pay for working, I'm guessing, an 8-hour shift, which makes sense, time and a half, right? But then it says 2 times their hourly rate. So is 21.1 still accurate?
So firefighters and police officers basically don't get holidays.
Right.
If they get a holiday off, it's because it's their normal day off.
Okay.
And it's a day off they would have gotten otherwise.
Right.
So when they work on a holiday, and they work 24-hour shifts, they are
Okay.
paid at time and a half
Yeah,
for that 24 hours.
okay.
This would say, if they work 24 hours and let's say they have a late call and they have to work an extra hour,
Ah,
that would allow that hour to be paid at 2 times their wage as
Oh.
opposed to time and a half.
okay. So 21.6 is just talking about that little extra work that comes surprisingly.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Or if someone calls in sick
Right, right.
and there's a shift that needs to be filled,
Okay.
and someone would need to fill that shift, they're working on a holiday, so they get time and a half, but there's really no extra incentive for someone to come in on a holiday,
Right.
except that this now would allow them to get paid 2 times their
A little
hourly
more,
rate for
yeah.
volunteering to
Yeah.
work overtime on a holiday.
That makes sense. Thanks.
Anyone else? Alderman Moore?
I don't have a question, I just have a comment, which is that I just want to extend my gratitude to you and to Mark and to Administrator Neal. I know that all of us sitting here, I think all of us sitting here are in support of the unions, and God only knows we're very supportive of our police and firefighters. Thank you, chiefs, both of you. But, you know, I also know that it's really tough to negotiate this contract every year, given the city's financial constraints, operating constraints. And so I just wanted to extend my gratitude. And I'm sorry that you have to do it every year. Truly sorry that we can't have a longer term
Yeah.
contract so you don't have to do
That's the
this.
goal.
Hopefully soon.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Leah, and Mark, and Neil. Next item, consideration of resolution 23-12-2660, authorization to contract with Accurate Appraisal for assessment services, put forth by the city administrator. And Mark has did you give everyone the revised resolution? I know you gave it to finance and personnel, but.
Nope.
I think we just did finance and personnel.
You're
You had it on
hoarding
the
them.
table. It's just the wrong
Yeah.
table.
What table is that?
Just a different one.
Okay. Mark, are you taking lead on this, or is Neil, or?
I can provide some
You want
introductory
to try
comments.
it?
Just, obviously, this is, we went out for request for proposals for this services. We did a 4-year contract that we have done in the past. Posted it to multiple places, tried to expand the direct recruitment of other firms to the extent that we're aware of other firms who did this. We received 1 proposal. As you can imagine, a lot of folks don't necessarily growing up wanting to be an assessor. It is a limited service in terms of the ability to find different firms. So the 1 proposal we did was from Accurate. Our current also does our current services. We met, both staff and the mayor met with them late last week to discuss just kind of service concerns that we've had in the past, and as well as discussing approach for going forward in the future, primarily focused around communications, access to them as for residents, being able to call and inquire about questions, making sure that they certainly understood that they were to be available pretty much at any time, not just during open book, but doing a little bit more, making sure that folks and residents are aware of that, so we have access to that, and also ensuring that the open book process was scheduled more appropriately with the timing of when actually notices of assessment go out, which they were amenable to. So I think the main area, obviously, of discussion was going to be identifying it to what extent. There's basically 3 levels of assessment detail, I guess, for lack of a better term, that we can get into. Essentially, there is a maintenance level that is very basic and is, very familiar. There's a market adjustment, and then there's also a market adjustment with inspections. Essentially, are kind of the three levels. We are essentially in a position of looking at, under the current budget, we are essentially looking, I think, just at the basic market rate proposal. I think, Mark, is what we were going to be looking at for the first year, and then actually recommending that as part of the referendum, assuming that would pass, the operating referendum, that we would be incorporating more of an inspection process, more detailed on that to ensure a higher level of accuracy on that. I guess with that, I'll turn it over to Mark to
Neil,
explain.
could you just say that again? So I heard you say sort of like a long-term stepping into a deeper level of assessment.
Correct. That would be for budget reasons. I think ideally, I think in the past we've done, or at least I think the Accurate would recommend a 4-year process of doing like a quarter of the city on an inspection basis at a time. Based on our current budget, we don't have funds allocated for that at this time. So we're recommending just kind of more of a basic level of service for this next year, for 2024. Then the years of 25, 26, and 27 would actually be broken down a third and a third and a third of the city for a higher level. That would actually be market-based services plus actual inspection of properties to ensure we are getting a higher level of accuracy.
Would that?
So, I mean, I can get into that because that's going to feed into what we're going to be talking about. So if you go to page 75, in there, that's the proposals. So there is 3 options. So the option 1, which we did not recommend. So this is called the maintenance. What this actually is so Accurate Appraiser, where the assessors were, be accurate. They do not adjust anybody's assessment unless you sell a house, buy a house, or you pull a permit. If you pull a permit, that would affect your assessment. Then you'd be looked at. Otherwise, your assessment would never change until you do a market adjustment with that or a walkthrough. So we did not recommend that. I've been here about 18 years. The city has never used that method. So I think a lot of the reason why they haven't used that method is more equity. Somebody has been here for 4 years and their assessments is never going up, but somebody bought a house that's a lot higher because that's where the market's at. They're paying a lot higher taxes over those years because the other one would never be adjusted, so they're paying a higher share. And I think, like I said, I've been here for a long time and I've always used the market rate adjustment, so I don't know if that was the reason why they did it back then, but I'm assuming it has to do something with equity to make sure everybody's kind of paying their fair share of taxes. The second option is this 4-year blend. So if you kind of look at it, what the Accurate recommended would be a maintenance for 24, 25 and do a market adjustment for 26, and then a maintenance for 27. So over 4 years, that's $136,800. And you see this thing called inspection cost. It really should be walkthrough cost, is what that ends up being. So that's a separate thing altogether. So if you wanted to walk through in those 4 years, you could. It would cost you each year $52,500 or a total of $210,000. Talk about that one. We decided on the next option as far as staff and house. Looking at this, basically kind of what we're doing now is annual market updates. So the resolution will say $52,500 for the annual cost for the next 4 years, $210,000. That's just what we're doing exactly right now. They'll go through, look at permits, sales, and then they'll do their analysis through sales and get their determination of your assessment. So we are recommending for 2024 that method, $52,500 for 24, and for the life of the contract for the 4 years, $210,000. This is where it's going to get a little confusing. So the inspection cost, like again, is the walkthrough. Since we don't think we didn't budget for the $52,000 in 2024, and one step back before that. So going back and do a little bit more research, every other contract we do walkthroughs. So we'll do a walkthrough contract 4 years, and we'll do for the next 4 years, we won't do a walkthrough, we just do the annual market updates. And so last year was an annual market update. The contract before that was a quarter of the city per year walkthrough. So what we're thinking is we don't have the funds for 2024 to do a walkthrough. Talking with Ackert Appraisal, if we do the referendum and we want to add that in there, we can add that as a cost and do a walkthrough to be consistent with what we have been doing in the past precedent for 25 through 2027. If we want to extend it to 2028, they said that'd be okay to actually do the walkthroughs to either a quarter of the city or do a third of the city, depending on how we want to negotiate with that. The cost would not change. The 210 would still be there. Or we can do a one year walkthrough. So what we're recommending in the resolution is the annual cost one, just what we're doing currently now, $52,500, and to do for 2025 to negotiate that based on if we want to include in the referendum to do that, a walkthrough for the next 3 years. We currently don't have the funds to do that. I mean, if you don't want to use the referendum, the other thing, the only way you'd also do it would be either cut services or use fund balance to balance that for the 3 years, 4 years. So that was our recommendation to go into that route.
Questions? Doug?
First, if I'm correct, the change in the resolution, the one you handed out to what we had in our packet, is just that last be it further resolved
Yes.
clause, is that right? And that's what would allow us also to negotiate that the walkthrough or inspection costs.
Correct.
Yeah, I think especially in this market, I think a market update every year is really important because, you know, the values have changed so much in the last 5 years, 10 years, pick your date, but so in the 4-year blend, they would only do it once out of the 4 years. I don't think would be adequate. And yeah, it's that is what we basically alternating contracts. Thinking we don't really need to do the walkthrough, you know, that often every 4 years, but after 8, then it is trying to do it again to make sure that we have an accurate database that we're basing assessments on.
And what that does to do the walkthroughs is that you don't want to think people are doing it illegally, but it catches a lot of people who don't. If you pull your permit, you're going to get looked at by the assessor. If you didn't pull a permit, you know, well, your neighbor, you know, I know his basement's done it. They didn't pull a permit. It's hard for to get that. So that's one of the things that gets caught during these walkthroughs, and it does catches all the data and make sure it's up to date with that. And just even though we used a market value, just one thing, doesn't mean we can. I know everybody has a misconception that just because your house went up, that you're going to be charged more taxes, and the city's able to levy more taxes. It still goes back to the number one thing. We're only allowed to increase our taxes by the levy limit number. So it doesn't matter if you're, you know, as long as you're staying within the curve, you know, if everybody's assessment up 10%, your taxes should go up to, your taxes should, if it was zero increase, your taxes would stay the same as if it wasn't.
They won't go up because of your assessment.
Right. Yeah.
But it's fair to everybody, because
Yes,
then
and that
everybody's
was the
being
point.
considered on the same. Alder Bernstein, then Alder DePua.
So, I think the other thing you changed was the years, and now therefore be resolved from 2024 to 2027, used to say 2028.
Yeah, that was in
Yes.
this.
Yeah, that's just.
Well, if I could, Alder, to be on that in terms of negotiating, that's subject to making ensuring that the assessing consultant can actually cover a third of the city for each year.
Right.
So there is the possibility that if they came back and said, well, it would be a little more comfortable doing a quarter, then we may come back. We just want to make sure there's some flexibility in this. So that's why that number probably originally popped up in there. Because I think they originally looked at a quarter each year. This kind of, our approach that we're looking at right now would change it to a third, which they did tell us at the meeting that they believe they'd be able to do. But I think we want to make sure when we do the contract that they're comfortable with that.
Okay.
We have some language guaranteeing that they're going to be able to cover that.
And so with the added thing for additional 2010, the years that would run would be 2025 to 2028?
Or 7 or 8, depending if it was 3 or 4 years afterwards.
Yeah, they can do it in 3, but but they want to do 4 if you want to spread the cost out. Over 4 years, we can do that.
And these inspection costs or walkthroughs, they're not necessary to do a market update for the property?
No, they're not.
Okay, so we can still do that
Yeah.
even if this is the draft?
Correct.
Why do it now instead of after the referendum is passed?
Just because our contract is up with them this year, so we need to have them contracted for this coming year.
But you won't have that money until the referendum is passed.
No, just for the basic level of service, we're talking about for 2024.
The referendum would pay for the walkthrough.
Yeah, if we had to-
Walkthrough, but not until after the referendum.
Not until 2025.
If we want to go
Why-
that route.
Why have this passed now instead of?
Honestly, so we can lock in rates with this particular proposal. Otherwise, if we're just negotiating a one-year deal, then we're back to the table and.
This will be contingent on the
Correct.
contract with Accurate.
Absolutely.
Based on the referendum.
Based on the referendum.
But we
That's
do still
absolutely
plan
correct.
on them doing assessment services in
Absolutely.
2024. It's just that they won't be doing
The
walkthrough.
walkthroughs would be the one thing that would be contingent on the referendum specifically, yes.
Because we update our assessments every year. Alder DePula?
I just wanted to just bring up my favorite tax subject, which is the tax loophole for commercial properties. And then by doing it the way that we're doing it, by doing the revaluation every year, it also helps prevent companies that own large commercial properties that are in LLCs that don't show that they've been sold, because what usually happens is the LLC is purchased and the real estate asset is part of the LLC. So you never capture that increased value at sale. So if we were to wait when properties just turn over to reassess them, you'd have commercial properties that just sit there forever. You'd never notice that they turned over, and then they would never pay their fair share of the equitable tax portion. So the way that we're doing it helps prevent that.
Great point.
That's really good to know.
Alder Rademacher?
Thank you. Mark, thank you for explaining things. You mentioned that for as long as you've been with the city, we've never taken the option 1 before, the bare bones.
Since I've been here.
Have we ever taken the option 3?
The option 3, that's the one we're recommending, option 3. So
Option 2 is recommended in the packet.
That's what,
That's what they recommend.
By the consultant. was
By
what
the
they
consultant.
Yeah.
yeah,
But
we,
Staff is recommending.
staff is recommending option 3.
then I have no more questions. Thank you.
Anyone else? Alder Moore?
Yeah, I guess I'm kind of questioning that we have in fact been, have we been operating on what would be the third option since
Yes.
you've been here?
Since I've been.
Some version of it.
I mean, we've had full market,
Right, but not the walk.
not the walkthroughs, and that's every other contract. So we have never had the maintenance, since I've been here, we never had the maintenance contract.
Okay, I guess I'm just wondering if that's the case, why, I mean, I think all of us are aware that there are certain properties that haven't turned over,
Yeah.
whose tax rates were ridiculously low in comparison to the rest of us, and it's one thing for me to challenge what my assessment is,
Sure.
but I'm not allowed to point at somebody else and say, you know, why is it that I'm paying, I mean, we're talking about people that had property 3 times the size of mine, as an example, that was paying the same amount for
Yeah,
years.
yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I don't really have a good answer to that. I know, they do the walkthroughs and my state's Supreme Court said, no, you don't have to let people on your property, inside your house, and it could have been, you know, an issue where not letting the assessors in to get the full measurement, so I think that's something to.
I don't think it's a matter of the house, I think it's a matter of the property. There's
Yeah.
no question that, you know, in some of the instances that I know,
Yeah,
the waterfront frontage and the overall size of the property, the actual acreage of the property, and as well as the front that they have
Yeah.
on water, was at least 3 times what, I'm just saying from my point of view, but I know other people as well, you know, 3 times what mine was, and yet their tax assessment was the same.
yeah. Yeah, I guess I don't have a good answer for you, but I mean, but, I do know that we've been working with some people. I mean, we've actually asked that kind of questions to the assessors, and a lot of times they say, if somebody would tell us, that maybe we kind of can look into that type of situation.
And they have done that. We've suggested some for them to look at.
But I know if, like, say, for Lakefront, there's like this whole thing, like the first is it 60 feet?
Yeah.
Something like 60, and then it kind of decreases after that, the less than that. So I know there's that in their analysis, but I'm not for sure. If you had certain ones, I think they could look at it.
So for future reference, as it relates to this service, if we are aware, or if anybody, any resident is aware of a discrepancy, the protocol would be to contact.
Yeah, so we did talk to
You.
him, yeah.
We give them Mark's cell phone number.
Yeah. So that's been the question. We had a couple of residents that we asked, who've said that, well, they never told us, so, like, if you tell us, we would pass that information on. I mean, we would pass it, because she works directly with Accurate. So she could pass that information on, and they could kind of review it, because a lot of times they'll just come out and take a visit to them, so that's what they were telling us.
And that has happened in the past. They've come out.
So it's a lot of times it's, there's 3,000 properties or whatever, if there is something, you just need to pass it on to us. At least pass it on to the assessors and we say, they took a look at it, they can document it for us. If the question comes back to us and they'll pass it on, they'll document one way or the other why they assessed it.
And there's also 4 different types of lake property. So depending, there's all kinds of different factors that go into things too. But I think I wouldn't disagree, there's definitely some properties that are probably assessed lower than they should be, and then they always say it's more art than science in some ways. Teresa?
Aldermore, to your point, we have in this community a number of folks who have worked in this industry before, who are knowledgeable of how things work, and I actually was fortunate to meet with Mark and Neil and a resident that brought some things to my attention, and it's not that difficult to download data from the Accurate Appraisals website. It's publicly available. Throw it into a spreadsheet and run some calculations against some pretty typical, features that a house would have that you can compare to other houses of very similar nature. And there were some interesting flags that I think were uncovered in that meeting. And I think the hope or the desire is that rather than a resident taking this on, it would be something that we as a city would be more proactive to download that data, run a few macros against it, and flag those properties for the appraisal, so that the next time around there could just be sort of a list of things to watch for.
Anyone else?
I'm just not sure how to make sure that happens. Is it just a simple conversation with city staff?
I
or
think
is
I
it-
said that we would talk to Neil about
Sure,
that when you and I
we can
talked
do
about
that.
it earlier, I think.
Absolutely.
Brian?
So I heard that we received one bid and that we reached out to some additional agencies that provide this. For other similar sized communities, are all communities are roughly our size utilizing a contract basis, or are they pairing up with other communities to offer an in-house solution for their appraisals?
I think for a majority, I think certainly in southern Wisconsin, although I think is more often than not, it's a contracted service for smaller communities. I think there are some instances where the county also may take that role on for more. I think in northern Wisconsin, that's a little more common that the county actually takes on that role. So it is certainly a question of service level, I guess, in terms of how many. Well, even as this contractor, I'm trying to remember. Mark, do you remember how many people they said that?
They said over 100 communities.
They worked on, so they're still working in a lot of areas. So one, that's good in terms of they have good data, theoretically, access to other comparables and taking a look at things. Two, it's also making sure, but then from our standpoint, and certainly from my standpoint personally, is making sure they're paying enough attention to us specifically as a client. So I think there are probably advantages and disadvantages to either approach.
I will say, Accurate Appraisal, and I can't remember the other firm out of Appleton, are the two big ones, and they basically do Dane County. But like Fitchburg, Sun Prairie, Madison, they have their own in-house. Problem is, I know Mary has even talked to the mayor of Fitchburg and basically said it's, to share some services, it's basically impossible to have their manpower do it. So it wasn't, we've reached out, to have that conversation.
And even Sun Prairie has switched back and forth a couple of times. They've had a contracted one and then they've got, so.
Sorry, but I think Brian was also asking about a third potential option, which is, do you know of anybody who has in fact shared, maybe like a Fitchburg, among smaller communities, not unlike we talked about sharing a sustainability coordinator with another community or whatever?
Yeah, I am not aware of, other than a county level or more of a contracted level. I think the number of, even in smaller communities, even you get to 3,000 properties, that's a significant workload for somebody to sort of add on.
Okay.
To even 3 or 4 communities without adding on additional staff makes that a little bit more difficult, I think.
Patrick?
Yeah, I was just going to mention, Sun Prairie has 40,000 people, and they just hired somebody to do their assessment finally. So it would be, looking at the budget that we spend right now, based on the amount that we were spending for the assessment, we would be spending more if we just had one person doing that. It looks like, because even if it was an $80,000 a year position, let's just say it's going to end up costing us $120 with benefits and everything else. So it would be more.
Anyone else? Okay, then we will move on. Back to consideration of Resolution 23-12-2659, authorization to negotiate a contract with Madison Metro for bus service within Monona, put forth by the Transit Commission. Now, who was going to present on this? Is Nancy and Mark kind of combined, or?
I'm going to leave it to Mark, but if I might, I just wanted to say one brief thing before we start, which is, first of all, that I recognize that this is a challenging issue for this community. It's been a difficult issue for the community, and so I want to acknowledge that, but I also want to extend my gratitude to the Transit Commission, Jillian Slate, Addie Ferber, Doug Paul, Laura Jasper, Rick Bernstein, and former alders Molly Groupie and Christy Goforth, and former transit members, if there was anybody else that was on the committee that I've missed. It was on before I came on board, because it has been a long process, and we're the government, we're used to length. There's lots of things that take a long time. I mean, Mayor, I think you just referenced a few things at the last meeting, that are coming to fruition that have taken a long time. But that being said, I want to extend my gratitude to everyone, because it hasn't been easy for us as a commission either. And I really am proud of the due diligence and the listening and the wisdom and the grappling with Metro and the grappling with First Student and the discussions with residents that this Transit Commission has really offered for 2 solid years. And so I just wanted to extend my thanks before I turn it over to Mark, obviously here to answer questions as well.
Thank you. Mark?
Sure. And actually got, I know Nancy just mentioned, she did a tremendous amount of work on this, so kudos to her and Rick. But also, Addie's back there, and Julian, I don't know if you know, Julian, I can't remember her last name, sorry. But offhand, it'll come to me after this. She basically wrote the resolution for us. She works for the state. She did a great job, I thought, writing that resolution. And then Addie did a lot with the information that's also provided. So what this resolution is us to kind of negotiate with Madison Metro. This is an intergovernment agreement, so just to start off, you know, a lot of times you have to go out for bids for these type of services, but since it's intergovernment, we didn't need to do a bid on this. We can just do this through an intergovernment agreement. So in case somebody wants to say we're not following proper statutes and laws, since it's an intergovernment agreement, we're able to do this like this. So basically what this is, when we first started out, we had a, does everybody have the map?
I got it.
So basically what we're asking, Madison Metro did approach us to, you know, contract service with them. We did meet with the commission. We had a lot of back and forth with this, did a lot of research, I thought, regarding this, and this is kind of what we came up with. So what we came up with is so the original proposal from Madison Metro was to go down, starting on Dempsey, to go down Stoughton Road, and then down to Cops area and back and follow that path around the C3. When I did talk with Madison Metro, they said, well, you can do the two-way system. So basically what that would be, at Dempsey, you'd come through town, through Dempsey to Buckeye, and you'd go all the way down to Cops, and you at the park and ride, you turn around, you go right back again. So so basically, you know, Stoughton Road around, you'd be one time basically every hour. So if you want to get an ephemerite, you want to go to the senior center or the pool, you'd have to wait for that bus to come around again, and you'd have to go, basically, you could transfer, but you could basically have to go all around again and take like an hour. So, you know, they looked at that, is that the best way of doing it? Madison Metro said, well, we can do a two-way system, which is this, they call it a two-way system, which would be they come at Dempsey and go all the way down to the park and ride in Dutch Mill and go right back. It's actually, and that would be Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. The exact times and the schedule is not complete. We would have to negotiate that, but that's, you know, we'd have to fit that in the schedule to get the exacts on everything. But that's, the outline would be 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Friday. The commission did hear what people were listening to. They said, well, maybe we'll just do that Monday through Friday. And the weekends, we still have access now, 7 days a week, 24, the G line over there in L, which will basically run every half an hour. So on the weekends, we'd be able to access the G line and the L to get anywhere else in Madison. That's actually quicker to downtown. So we will still have access to the weekends. Just won't be going through the town. It would be going on the G and L you would have access to. On top of that, we will work with Madison Metro to put those stops in. And the police department actually asked today too if they can be involved a little bit with Public Works to make sure we're following all the traffic stuff too, and figure those out. But so the G, we would have access 7 days a week to those routes. The C again, C3 would be Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. And we would figure those times exactly out where it's stopping. Most of those do have sidewalks, and that was one big thing that was mentioned in their discussion of the sidewalks. Our requirement is just to put a pad in, so for now. And so I think majority of them would have already sidewalked in, Nichols Road, Dean Road, Ephemerite, Cops, Monona Drive, we'd stop there. The only one stretch, even if we don't know if we would put a stop in between Dean and Nichols, if we put them on the corners, we'd have to put a pad in somewhere for those.
When you say a pad, you mean?
Like an ADA pad, so that's for staying where they can stand.
Piece of contract.
For contract pad.
For a bus stop?
For a bus stop.
Okay.
You're not required to put in a shelter, you're not
Got
required
it.
by their standards,
Okay.
just required to do that.
But if you have a sidewalk, you're saying then you don't need to put in the pad?
You don't need to put one in if you don't put the pad. It does provide paratransit 7 days a week. So if you look at these routes, they'll go off 3/4 of a mile. So basically, if we would draw a map of 3/4 of a mile, they'll pick you up. There's one little area on this map that I believe doesn't hit might be, I think it's Belle Isle, like the very tip of Belle Isle. It's not in the paratransit, but if you cross the street, I think you're in it, so I think it's easy to, but what they would do is basically kind of what our system does now. You have to qualify, there is paperwork you have to fill out. They would be willing to work with the senior center to help with that if need to bring somebody in to fill the paperwork out. You do have to qualify it for that. They will pick you up your house. They will go to within 3/4 a mile, anywhere on the route. So if the route's in Middleton somewhere, you're in Monona, and you need to go to a doctor in Monona, they will take you there. East Town Mall, West Town Mall, which you cannot do right now, they will take you there. So anywhere within 3/4 of a mile, paratransit will take you.
Of any of their routes.
Any of their routes. So Verona, anything, anywhere in their system, they will take you within 3/4 of that route.
Meaning, let me just clarify, because it's not, it sounds like you're saying within 3/4 of a mile, they'll get you to your doctor. And what you're saying is that if you reside within 3/4 of a mile of Metro,
Yeah.
you would qualify for paratransit.
Yes.
If you don't, you wouldn't.
Right.
So.
Right, you'd still
Right.
qualify, but technically right now, we have somebody who lives in Monona, crosses the street to the Madison side to take the paratransit. So if,
Right.
there's a little edge in Belle Isle that you have to cross the street or pick you up. So there's one little area of the
Right.
city.
Because it's not within 3/4 of a mile of
Correct.
Yeah.
Madison.
Quick question, if it's okay. If the route were to go down, say, Pheasant Hill, that's going to exclude other homes from being eligible for door-to-door pickup with paratransit, right? Because then,
If it doesn't go down Pheasant Hill?
if it goes down Pheasant Hill instead.
There's talk about just keeping it within 2 or 3 blocks of
Yeah.
Monona Drive, but then you'd be cutting out the entire area west of there, and that
Yeah.
probably would affect this
'Cause if it's further
3/4
than
of a mile.
3/4 of a mile from a
Right.
route, then you can't get door-to-door pickup.
Right, so if you keep on going straight in Pheasant Hill and going straight across, you'd lose a lot of people towards the.
Okay.
Right.
center.
It wouldn't be able to access paratransit. Right.
For instance, where I live would not have access to paratransit then, because it's more than 3/4.
Right.
So with that too, working with Metro, I don't have it in here, but they talked about we would have a 3% escalator clause each year. We'll have that in the contract. And there, also, when this would take an effect, if we decide to, our current contract takes 6 months. You have a 6 months termination clause. Metro needs at least 6 months too, to get ready, so it'd be the perfect timing. So it all depends when we would approve this, when I would talk to both companies, Pursuit is aware of it. So it'd be 6 months from the time we would approve it, start working with them, or approve the contract when it would come. So it could be, the reality is, it would probably be the 3rd quarter of 2024.
Because they basically make changes on a quarterly basis,
They
is
do,
that
I mean,
right?
they're unions, drivers, they have to take a bid, which route, they gotta put it all in their system. They gotta market it, so they have other stuff they gotta do on their end too, so. As far as that, I know there was a lot of stuff in the packet, I don't know.
Do you have a dollar amount from Madison Metro for this latest version with the 2-way and dropping the weekends for the C line?
Did I not put that in there? I don't, it's not in there.
You don't have that?
I think it was in there.
It was in the transit packet last meeting. I think it was 135, does that sound right?
135, I believe it was, yeah.
And that's for the part that we pay out of
Yeah.
taxes, right?
Yeah.
That does not include the state funding.
It excludes the state funding, and it's basically what we pay currently right now.
Yeah, okay.
Once the numbers are subtracted. Plus, we get money, so if you ride it, Metro is also be able to track. So if you're a Monona resident, you get on at any of the Monona stops, we get that revenue. That comes to us.
Oh,
So
okay.
it will reduce the share too. So if it takes off, we do a ton of people, our number will actually even go down even further, so.
And by the time this went to effect, they would have the ability to track when people get off the bus too.
That's one of their goals, yeah.
Yeah.
that I know they're working on.
I thought they were, yeah,
Yeah.
they were working towards that.
They're working towards that.
I think with the timing the way it is, it looks
Yeah.
like that might be the case.
There was also a lot of talk about, we want electric buses and stuff like that. We brought that to their attention, basically because of federal law and DEI requirements. Like, it has to be a random pick of who gets what route gets it. So right now, I don't know exactly how many buses, not a lot right now. So basically, just randomly pick which route gets it. They have no control over, like, Monona, you get electric bus. Basically, it's almost like a lottery system. They have to pick. So they have to pick basically randomly pick which route gets it for that route for a while.
But they're adding electric
They are, yep. So I think by the time it'll be 50% here fairly soon, I can't remember the numbers.
They are adding them, but they've also had, if you Google electric buses in Metro, you'll find that they're like every other supplier in the United States. They're having a really hard time because the people that they've contracted to build the buses are having a hard time getting parts. And then the first buses that came in were not to specification, so they were talking about, so they sat in a garage for a year. And they were looking at negotiating for a different supplier to supply the buses that they've already ordered. So it hasn't been an easy, like all electric stuff out of the.
That's their plan, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're moving in that direction.
Yeah, they're moving in that direction. I'm just saying, it would be impossible for us to judge when we might see something in Monona, that's all. Just being candid about that. There have been a couple of changes since besides the route that we just talked about. There are a couple of changes on the transit front since we first raised this issue that I think are noteworthy. One is that First Student, when we have been contracting with them all this time, was operating out of Mineral Point. And frankly, was a really small operation. And they recently won the contract to take on the Madison School District run. To date anyway, the feedback that they've received from that has not been very pleasant in the press. But beyond that, and more important to this, is that First Student bought Badger Bus. And I mention it because paratransit by Madison Metro is not the big buses. It's small buses, just like we have now. In fact, there's a Badger bus that parks on, I think it's Gordon or Wallace every single day. So somebody is a driver for Badger Bus here in Monona. So that's, they contract with Badger Bus as one of the providers of paratransit. So who knows? Maybe the drivers that were being used now for the lift would end up being transferred over to drive. I would assume that they would be transferred over to drive for Badger Bus, since they're good drivers. So the landscape has changed, and in fact, the other impact of that was that there was another bus company, small bus company called Right Way, nationally based, just like First Student, that had moved into Monona in our industrial park. I don't know, what, a year and a half ago or something. And they came in front of the Plan Commission several times, one of which was to say that they were going to be expanding their operations because they were going to be getting the Madison school district contract. And they didn't. First Student did, and they up and left. So it just goes literally, like every bus. They canceled their lease in Monona and left. So it's a fickle. The private small bus thing is fickle, obviously, depending on the contracts they get.
One thing I forgot to add, one of the big reasons too, I know there's a lot of information that Addie put in here, that the commission put in here. And one of the reasons, you know, the difference between the express and the lift is, and you can transfer anywhere. You can get to the airport, you can get to the East Town, you know, that's the big difference too, is, you know, it's the availability of these buses, you know, to go throughout Madison, even into Sun Prairie, and into Middleton, you know, that's the, you know, huge difference, and that's what, one of the reasons too. I know Fatty is up here, she could probably sell this thing to you guys in a second. I'm not the good salesman person, but there's so many different things. I know there's a lot in here. But if there's a lot of questions, concerns.
Alderwood?
Just a couple comments. I guess since you brought up our current provider, are they currently running all the routes that they're contracted to run?
The first route is not being run right now.
And that's been going on for a long time.
Yeah.
so.
Okay, so we don't need to look at their experience in the Madison School District to know they have problems with reliability, because we've had it here. So, setting that aside, I think this is a great proposal. It's more service, more hours, weekends, 7-day-a-week paratransit service, which is a big improvement, increase over what we have for apparently the same cost.
Yeah, it's a little bit cheaper. I did find it's 11,000 net, 111,000. So we pay, it's a little bit cheaper.
And I assume with the one-way 12-hour, 14 hours a day, that would be one bus per hour each way.
Yeah.
So 28 total.
Yes. The total, I mean, if you're doing the two ways, you are doubling.
Two-way, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it would be roughly estimated about 28 times.
Yeah.
Can you say that again? So 28 times?
Roughly, yeah.
On
Through the city.
On the weekday C3 route, they would be running 14
In one
buses
direction
each direction.
and 14 in the other.
So if you go back to the map again, so once it gets down to the Dutch Mill, it goes right back through, which goes right back to the city.
Folks, could you please keep it quiet back there?
So, yeah, so once you get down to Dutch Mill, it turns around and comes right back through the city. So, like you said, if I'm right, you want to go to the pool, and then when they come home, they'll pick up at the pool and they go there, so you only get like a 5-minute ride, whatever, instead of having to go all the way around again.
So instead of an hour between buses, we're at half an hour.
Yeah, roughly. Right, I think it's about 40 minutes, I think we told you, roughly 35 to 40, but yeah.
And I think one of the reasons we chose this is that it provides transportation for people within Monona.
Yeah.
It's not just between the Capitol and the hospital.
Right.
It's for short trips,
Grocery store.
grocery
Yeah,
store, what have you.
yeah.
Library.
The other-
Library.
Yeah, the other one that went up and down Stoughton at the time, we don't really get any kind of.
No.
Well, it goes through Monona, but it would only go one way once an hour,
Right.
so.
Well, there's two buses. one going
But when it was
Now-
going down
now
Stoughten,
there
it only went once an
But
hour.
in the original, right?
Yeah,
Oh, the original.
right.
It was just
Yeah.
one direction.
Right.
You'd have to ride the whole circuit just to,
And so
yeah.
we were completely awestruck that we could get that much more service at less than what we're paying now.
Yeah.
If we go with the 5-day service.
It's knocking off the weekend, but you still have the weekends you would have.
Right.
The G and the L.
The other buses
So
going
you
through Monona.
Right.
So on the weekends, a person would just need to get themselves to Monona Drive.
Or Broadway.
Or Broadway.
Broadway.
But
But
the bus would not-
paratransit would be
the
fully
bus would
operational.
not come
Yeah,
in.
paratransit would
Like
still
if I
be-
wanted to go to a Badger game, you
Yeah.
know, then I would just need to get myself to Monona Drive, then.
And park at
hop
Nichols
on,
School or something
Park
and-
somewhere, or
yeah.
walk, or whatever, ride a bike, okay. But it wouldn't come through, you know, closer to my home.
I think something else to keep in mind too is right now, we have 5-day-a-week service, but it's really only,
It's, yeah.
the express goes from what, 6:30 until 9 in the morning and 3:30 till 6 at night? And then those 6 hours in between is the paratransit. It's only 6 hours a day, 5 days a week for paratransit, whereas this would be all 7 days
Right.
and, what, 12 hours a day or 13 hours a day? It's something, I don't know, we're not real, well, we would like to see Madison people come here to spend money and things, but I've had calls, several calls, which surprised me, since I became mayor, from people who live in Madison and have a doctor in Monona. And the Madison Paratransit right now will not bring them to their doctor in Monona because we don't have a contract with them. And why can't I do something about it? And I'm like, well, you're a Madison resident, and that's how they've chosen to run. But this, I assume, would also resolve that question. Any other questions?
Just have a
Alder Moore?
question for quick clarification. Is C running, I mean, we're distinguishing between C3 and C. Is C, which goes all the way downtown?
It turns into C. You don't have to get off, though.
No, I know, but are they running the rest of C?
Yes. So we don't want to get charged.
For 7 days a week?
Yeah, that's runs 7 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
But you'd have to get there through the G&L. So you could park somewhere by the C.
Right, so if you hop the L and went up to
Somewhere for a
the
transfer.
Cottage Grove Road or whatever, you could hop to C
Yeah.
to get downtown on the weekend.
Yeah.
Because C comes to Cottage Grove Road, right?
Right.
And Dempsey ultimately splits into 3 different
Yeah.
routes, and it's just the C
Then you
line,
just see
or
it
the
go, yeah.
3 that comes to Monona, the other 2. And they will continue to run
Yeah, they continue.
on weekends and everything. Rick?
I just think the purpose of the transit commission, or the focus of the transit commission, once this is possibly adopted, will be on seeing how well this meets expectations. There's not hard data to say exactly how many people are gonna ride this. We have expectations based on surveys and anecdotes, but we won't know that for sure until we've had some experience with it. And so it'll be the commission's job to really monitor that and see how well it's functioning. And I think Nancy will be the first to say we have to do everything we can to make sure this is a success. So there'll be other issues that'll come up to make sure we can support this and give it the best shot we can have.
And we'll have a termination clause in there, too.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's safe to say that probably the same 25 people that currently ride the Monona Express, we could rely on that. We'd at least have 20 people riding this Madison Metro bus, maybe. I know I can't imagine ridership sinking below what it currently is when you offer more times of the day for people. I just can't imagine why that would happen.
Alder DePula.
Yeah, I think if we're going to continue to talk about diversity and equity in Monona, we can't have a public transportation system that only caters to 9-to-5 workers.
Right.
Because we're ignoring everyone else in the community that has a second shift job, a third shift job, or 3 jobs, because that happens. And who's going to wait around for, it just doesn't work with that schedule. So that's an important consideration.
Yeah, you kind of exactly feel the same way, Patrick. I mean, I won't be here for the meeting where we'll be voting on this, unfortunately, so I'll have to figure out if I'm allowed to vote
You
in
can
another
be here
way.
via Zoom.
I could Zoom it. But I chair 2, we all chair committees, obviously, and this really directly impacts 2 of my committees. Sustainability, there's massive environmental benefits to this change. 30% of all of the, our country's fossil fuel use is from our transportation grid. DEIB is the other committee I chair, and as Patrick just said eloquently, I mean, this particular goal of adopting public transportation that serves more people is written specifically into the DEIB report that this body approved 2 years ago, and which now the committee I chair is working to implement. It is written word for word. We must adopt better public transportation. For those who are working with housing, affordable housing, this ties directly into the ability of a developer to even care to put an affordable housing unit in our community. I'll just ping pong it back to Patrick.
And I'm just
Yeah,
going
I
to
just-
reiterate what you just said too, in the
Right.
sense that, I mean, we can't, every project that we're building,
Yes.
that someone is putting parking spaces in the ground.
Right.
It's $35,000 to $50,000 a parking space.
And they'll
If
never
we can-
get that money back.
No, if we can
So,
reduce, if we
right.
can reduce parking
Right.
because of a robust public transportation system, that has a direct result with housing costs.
Right.
And we can't hope to build affordable housing if there's going to be one-car families with no
right.
other option for transportation.
Exactly. And then as a business owner yourself, you can speak to this, that folks who are, looking for employment and they rely on public transportation, well,
Case in
can't come
point.
here, they can't get a job here. 'Cause-
Case in point, interviewed two
Right.
people last week, right, in Madison that would love to come work in Monona.
At your
and
shop,
can't
yes.
with the schedule that exists right now.
Right.
Because one has a disability too, so can't walk for long distances.
Right.
And otherwise, they could be working right now. So,
Yeah.
And I think I would say there was a real effort made in designing this route to make sure it hits all of our larger apartment complexes, those we know are just in the planning stages, and those which are already here. I'm really happy that it's going to go out to Stoughton Road, to the new workforce affordable housing development out there. And on Femrite, there's several elderly apartment
Yeah.
complexes, and Owen Road. I mean, the committee really took that into consideration to make sure we were trying to hit all of those. Alder Holmquist?
I thank everybody for all the work on this. It's been a long discussion for many, many, many years, and I appreciate everybody that came out tonight and wrote for feedback. I think it's always good to get additional thought and consideration. I think there's a lot on the table here. The simpler version of should we be connected more with regional transportation, I think is an easier question to agree with, that a good connection of regional transportation is important. Some of the consideration, or some of the difficulties I had with the original proposal, I still have some considerations or some difficulties with the C3 route as it's proposed, and I'd just like to kind of cover them because I know we will only have a little bit of time between now and the next time. So some of the route considerations, the easiest is the middle part of Winnequa, which I think was spoke about quite a bit tonight, as well as through some other comment, is a concerning portion. I think there is no sidewalks, there is no bike lane, there is no separation, there's parking on one side. It's a very difficult portion. Even just the bus, I'll take it back. Any large vehicle traveling that portion is a difficult portion to travel routinely. So that is one concern. I heard you, Mark, saying maybe there isn't a stop on that portion, is one consideration, but that is one of the pieces that I heard loud and clear, and I also have. The second has to do with Pheasant Hill Owen section. If I first start at the Monona Drive Owen intersection, it is a very difficult intersection to navigate in a passenger vehicle, let alone a large vehicle or a bus. Turning left at the light is next to impossible. As well as the number of curb cuts between Monona Drive, and I see our police chief on tonight, and if our fire chief was here as well, I know he would echo the same concern that the number of curb cuts between the post office and Monona Drive is inappropriate. And if you add any other additional large vehicle traffic through there, I think you have major concern without substantial redesign. If we're looking as that, if that is the location for in and out of the city. There is a section of Owen that I think is concerning as it approaches Pheasant Hill. That does narrow down has parking on one side, and you eliminate the sidewalk. I think there is some initial desire, is my guess, is we have a large apartment complex, our senior housing, as well as other apartment complexes and other high-density areas, as well as the church, that it made some sense, is my guess, of why that might be a good cut through, come down Owen and then down to Pheasant Hill, rather than just going up to Nichols, which seems to be our arterial street, which is to accommodate larger vehicles. Along Pheasant Hill is parking on both sides of the street. No bike lanes, no sidewalks, no separation. The other piece that came up had to do with the two-way traffic made sense. It helped, I think, respond to some of the issues of currently, or one of the ideas of being able to have transportation within the city. I think what it misses now is the heart of the shopping area is now not accessible by the route, as well as Ahuska Park. And Ahuska Park being one of the most widely attended regional parks in the area, that is now not on the route, as well as the shopping area.
When you say the shopping area, you talking about the grocery store?
Grocery store.
Can I, I'd be happy to dive in on the list. First of all, we are still working, we actually have Madison Metro coming to the next meeting, assuming that they're available, to discuss that stretch of Broadway, as well as the stops overall, both in the C3 route and the rest of the other routes, because we haven't nailed down exactly where we want all the stops. But we're very aware as a commission that stretch, we're not happy with missing that stretch of Broadway either. We love the fact that it goes to Park and Ride. But we're not happy with that stretch, and so Mark's already been in communication with Metro, and we're going to start working on that at the next meeting. The stops, as well as if we can address that lower end that you just referred to, and get closer to the shopping, and go by Ahuska. As it relates to one of the other pieces, which is to say the Winnequa Road, the mayor is also always has been on record, starting at the last election, of saying that that would not be that expensive to put a sidewalk on that stretch of Winnequa Road. It's not that long of a stretch, and our intention all along with the bike ped plan was to extend the sidewalk on Winnequa anyway, and then there's the other piece that's by the park, right? You were referring the changes that are going on.
Well, we are putting in a walking path next year. There'll be a walking path around the north end of Winnequa Park, which I think will get at least some of those walkers off Winnequa Road.
Right.
I certainly would do that if I were them.
Right.
It's only a half a block off. Be a
Right.
much more pleasant experience.
Right.
So I think that'll help for a chunk of that.
Right.
Anyway, and I'm more than willing to put it into capital budget. In fact, I've already talked to Brad. And Public Works has done a little bit of research on trees and that kind of thing along that stretch of Winnequa.
Right. Right.
What would be involved. So obviously, we haven't done a big deep dive into it, but
And you're referring to?
to a sidewalk.
Yep.
If I look at the overview of the GIS map, the vast majority of the right-of-way would be on the west side of the street, not on the east side. So you,
We'll have to see what it is. I mean, that west side's also problematic because there's some big hills that come right up to the,
so when I pull up the GIS
Right.
mapping, that shows the vast majority of the public right-of-way on that side of the street.
Yeah.
And it's more troublesome on that side.
Yep.
Topographically, for sure.
And is there currently parking on both sides of the street?
No.
On
Winnequa,
Winnequa?
just one side.
I didn't think so.
No.
Right, but on Pheasant Hill there is.
and you can certainly change that
Correct.
on Pheasant
That's
Hill.
basically where I was going with that.
Yeah.
But on Winnequa, there's really there's no room for both sides of the street to have parking.
No.
I have drove the bus, been on the bus with the drivers, with that turn from Owen on, or from Monona Drive.
I'll let you drive the bus.
From Monona Drive heading north and turning onto Owen Road, and they didn't think it was an issue at all.
They didn't think it was, the
They
Metro bus
they
drivers
didn't
did
think it
not
was an
think.
issue. They actually drove the whole route, both
Right.
ways, and
Okay.
they didn't think there was, but they drove it, and they didn't think that issue was a big, they didn't think it was an issue at all.
So
And,
they've driven worse.
so, that was the response to me when we drove it, so I just let you know.
Do you recall what they said about that Owen, Monona Drive?
That's the one that was, they didn't think that was an issue.
Oh.
I think the issue Brian brought up was curb cuts, which wouldn't be Monona, the buses.
Yeah, that's a different issue than,
Yeah.
you know, and I assume that's gonna all be under redevelopment, so that it would be, like Brian said,
Mm.
you'd have to, we could put that in the TIF to redo that, if it's, especially on the bowling alley side.
Mhm.
But that would be one of those things you'd want to look at, yes. As far as the other side, I don't, you'd have to figure out, I mean, they would figure out with us what would be the best place to put it with those type of situations.
But I think it would be more of an internal discussion, right? To figure out how to handle the Owen Road issues with curb cuts?
Yeah, I mean, that's an internal thing, yes.
Should this be referred to Public Works? For them
Well,
to-
eventually, but that wouldn't really happen until we do a development, right? Isn't that what you're saying, Mark?
No, I mean, the one side, but yeah, if you're talking about the current stuff, you would have to,
Well, I mean, all the issues that Brian brought up seem like Public Works would have some
yeah, I
advice.
mean, I don't have a problem with them looking at it. They don't have, I mean, they said they would look at it, whatever we gave them, for information wise, but I don't know where that's.
Can we have, Neil, do you want to?
I think, certainly the mayor's point, the time certainly to address that, all there is when redevelopment does occur. You can certainly go through right now and identify ones that we think could be eliminated or could likely be combined with an adjacent property. I think that's something, that's an exercise staff could probably do right now, just looking at all the existing ones. Just kind of a preliminary identification that, yeah, these two could probably be one, or closing one or the other, just based on taking a look at really any of those areas.
You're talking about Owen Road specifically.
And I would,
curb
and actually,
cuts.
would actually say that really probably should apply citywide, to be honest with you at this point, in terms of.
And we did a lot of that
Access
on Monona
points.
Drive. when we
Exactly, so-
redid Monona Drive,
Yeah,
yeah.
any opportunity where there's, I think, and I'm going to speak for the chief, or certainly for Public Works, but any opportunity we have to eliminate an additional access point, which is a potential accident location, and to recenter it and realign it with either other access points or other streets, we should be looking to do that anyway. So I think it's a natural, I think a natural look at the Owen Road corridor to take a look and do that.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I mean, there are several points that Brian brought up. There may be others. And that's why I thought Public Works might want to have an official look at it.
It'll kind of depend on the individual point, I think, and that may not be the final route either.
Right, so.
So let's
Mayor,
wait
can
until we
can
know
I
what
just-
that is.
This recommendation is a recommendation for approval for the city council, for the city to continue negotiations with Madison Metro, to say,
Yeah.
we're going with Madison Metro.
Okay.
We're gonna, it says, continue to negotiate with.
Correct.
So we know that there are details.
Yeah.
And
Okay, so
you know,
the road-
including like the exact stops that we're gonna have, and who's gonna pay for those stops, since I'm assuming that we're, since Monona Drive is not all of our responsibility. It's also, it's not our road, it's not singly our road. There are other things that have to go on here, but I think the intent of the recommendation was to say, it's time for us to make a commitment to Madison Metro if we approve this, so that we don't continue to, because there's one person I didn't thank at the beginning of this, and that's Mark,
Kudos
who
to
has
Mark.
done
Yay.
an unbelievable job. Like the number of times we've asked you, can you call Metro and ask them that? Can you call Metro and ask them that? Can you ask? It's just been a huge amount of work, and so the idea is that we want to be negotiating good faith as we go forward around the rest of the details with Metro.
So we can go ahead and negotiate with Metro, but at the same time have other committees look at the route to see what, if any, changes might be necessary.
Well, I'm not sure if we'd have them, making decisions about the route.
And then they
but-
can take a look at it. I know, like, the chief's concerned was, like, say, the police chief is, you know, how, like, a lot of times the Metro takes a break if the bus might just sit somewhere for 5 minutes on the main road. And things like that, you know, they do that sometimes.
Sure.
And how do we write that in the contract, or how we do that? So there's things that I know he wants to make sure that we're able to write into the contract
Right.
if we can.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
yeah.
I guess it's my thought that it should be referred to other committees,
Yeah.
public works,
Well.
public safety, the police chief and others should have a chance to officially review and consider the recommended route at this point.
I think we can certainly ask them for advice, but I don't think we're going to bring it to all these other committees for approval.
That would be.
That's just, this is the purview of the Transit Commission. Public Works certainly will probably have some comments about
Right.
curb cuts and how roads are designed and things, but I don't think we're going to rehash the whole thing and have Public Works approve it too, because that's not their expertise. This is the Transit Commission's role
Well,
to look
I
at
don't think
it.
the Transit Commission has any expertise dealing with curb cuts.
As I said, that's where we would ask Public Works for their thoughts about that.
Public works staff, not the committee.
Most likely, possibly both, depending on what the question is. We don't know what the question will be at this point. We don't have a final, plan for the route. We don't have the contract, so I think there's a lot of things that still need, I don't want to really get too many things involved in this resolution when we don't have final decisions about a lot of things right now.
The way it typically works, Rick, with a plan commission as an example, is that whenever we do, development reviews, it goes to public, as it relates to curb cuts or parking or turns or whatever, it goes to department heads who simply write a paragraph in the work that the plan commission is doing. It doesn't go in front of the committees, and it doesn't go, they don't do a wholesale review and sign it. They simply say, this works, this doesn't, have you thought about this easement, et cetera, and that gets put into our work as a plan commission. So.
And Mayor, just a quick comment, just to make sure that, in almost all cases, and I would certainly defer to the city attorney if he was here, but if existing driveways, those are most often vested rights into a property. So you would have to actually, if there's an existing driveway, unless there's a specific action or negotiating, like either through a TIF or through a general development plan, you can't just say that driveway is going away. If it's there, there's actually a vested property right for that driveway now. So in cases, the advantage if there was a TIF assistance or there was something going on for customized zoning approval, that would be the time when you would be requesting, in exchange for some other considerations, we'd like that driveway either moved or removed or relocated. So just a word of caution, the city can't just go down the street and take a marker and saying, gone, gone, gone. Those access points are vested rights with those properties, so.
Okay. But it seems like these issues have to be addressed before.
But eventually.
Once we know what the route is.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think to Alder Moore's point, this is really about continuing negotiations
Yeah.
with Madison Metro as opposed to right way that packed up and left town. And first student who is unable to fulfill our current contract because of staffing shortages. Am I representing that accurately? It's really about continuing with Madison Metro. It's not about approving a final plan right now.
Correct. I mean, the resolution, sorry, I'll get to the specific resolution. It says, therefore be it resolved that the city council hereby accepts the recommendation of the defense, authorizes the staff to negotiate a contract with Madison Metro to provide weekday bus service from 6 to 8 on a two-way basis. So that wouldn't change, right? To guarantee a C3 route that loops southbound on Femright Drive and returns northbound, right? Provides 7-day paratransit service and ensures that buses on existing bus routes that pass through Monona with extended hours open their doors within Monona at reasonable intervals. all that is, all that is completely true. None of that would change
Right.
in negotiations.
So
Which is
then,
why it's, the recommendation stands as it is, I think.
I agree.
Doug?
I think Nancy just covered what I was gonna say, so no need to repeat it.
Okay. Alder Holmquist.
To that point, is there a reason that FEMRITE is called out for the southbound and northbound in the resolution as part of the contract?
I think part of it was
'Cause
you're
earlier
trying
that
to hit
was-
all those senior housing developments there,
Well,
weren't we?
earlier it was mentioned that that's one of the pieces of continued conversation.
Yeah, and that's one of the,
Looping southbound is not, returning northbound is. In other words, we're confident in the bus as it's going southbound, going down FEMRITE, if you look at the map.
that's just so it shows it goes to Dutch Mill Road and comes back northbound. So it's just, I mean, it's not a, goes
So
down
that
south.
mention is only about what?
To make sure it goes down southbound.
It says southbound on FEMRITE, which is what it does.
I mean, it's not a,
So if I'm right, from Monona Drive down to Cops?
No, if you look at the map,
Mm-hmm.
Could you bring the map over?
it goes down, and it goes southbound on Monona Drive, and then goes south on FEMRITE. So FEMRITE is mentioned as, right.
And what
probably
I'm
should have
saying
said
is
what it was.
earlier when I brought that up of that would then miss a Huska and the grocery store.
Right, but what it's saying is it loops southbound on FEMRITE. It doesn't say it goes northbound on FEMRITE. It says it returns northbound. It doesn't say it returns northbound on FEMRITE. And
That's
that
the
was
one thing we're trying to
intentional
work
because
out
we're
right
still
now,
working that
that
out.
I said it would go down Broadway to Monona Drive, is
yeah,
that
it's like,
what you're
that's the,
thinking of,
the
right?
commission right now, this is the way it is. But the commission has talked about, when it comes back, instead of going back to FEMRITE, to go, when you say northbound, is to go down Broadway.
It doesn't say it's going northbound on FEMRITE. It says
So then
it's
why
going
are we
southbound.
calling out southbound on FEMRITE?
Because initially, we were hoping that we were gonna have it completed with Madison Metro, and then they are struggling with the turn at Monona Drive.
What's the concern at the turn at Monona Drive?
It's the,
It's because it's a tight right-hand turn, and it's an extremely busy intersection with turn lanes. So it's hard for the bus to make the
That can't be
swing.
any more challenging than Monona Drive and Owen.
I think
Yeah.
we can certainly ask them that when they're here at
We're
the
gonna
next
ask them
meeting,
that when they
right?
But hang on,
Oh, I get
this
it.
road is specifically called out in,
I mean, we just get rid of it. We can come back and
It's-
change it, but it doesn't
We
really.
can take the FEMRITE out of the resolution. It doesn't, but the resolution is accurate, because we are going south on FEMRITE. Regardless of what happens on Broadway, we're going south on FEMRITE,
We
which is what the
return
resolution
northbound, so,
says.
yeah.
So you can
Okay.
return
It was a question.
northbound, down Broadway, past to Houston, past the shopping.
That's what
Yeah.
the commission wanted. That's not really what Metro wants. So that's the big issue. They'd rather just go back.
Right, it's not, and, you know, we're talking through alternatives, but it doesn't, but going south on FEMRITE is accurate.
okay, it was this question.
Yeah.
Mark, currently our lift does a mile outside of our
Yes,
current route.
roughly.
And this paratransit would be 3/4 of a mile.
No, you
No.
have to live within 3/4 of a
Yes.
mile of a bus route to participate in paratransit.
Goes anywhere. in
And it
the
goes
region.
anywhere up to a 3/4 mile.
From
No.
from an
No.
established Metro bus route.
Yes, hang on, let me finish my sentence.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm speaking the same language here. Is the mile in the, for us currently, in the 3/4 of a mile, is there federal funding that's causing some of that limitation? For example, the limitation for the G and the L right now to open their doors is because they don't have a contract with us.
Yeah.
That's why they can't open the doors,
Because we don't pay, yes.
We don't-
because they don't have a contract.
Right. But it includes
So,
money. yeah.
is there also a limitation to the 3/4 of a mile for the paratransit Or is that something that can be negotiated?
Maybe I'm not following what you mean.
I think the 3/4 mile is a federal law requirement.
The federal, it is a federal requirement, 3/4 law.
For the minimum?
I think we're being kind of confused about the 3/4 mile. Isn't it that you have to live within 3/4 of a mile of a bus route in order to be eligible for paratransit, right?
Yes.
It doesn't have anything to do with how far
Yes, I mean, you're still
paratransit will
eligible.
take you.
It's
though.
eligible for the pickup at the door.
Right.
Yes, so pickup at the door, that's what it's for.
But they'll take you anywhere in
It'll
this
take you
area.
anywhere, it'll take you to Middleton, but it'll only take you 3/4 of a mile away from an established bus route. So if you're in Middleton, it'll take you to Middleton, but it'll only take you 3/4 of a mile away from that bus route in Middleton.
And I understand that.
Okay.
I'm not, if we didn't come through the city at all, and we just did the GNL, and we paid a contract, and we opened doors.
Yeah.
Let's just keep this simple.
Yeah, then we get to 3/4 of a mile.
We get 3/4 of a mile. Can we negotiate for beyond that 3/4 of a mile? So for example, right now, if
I'll
you
take
cut
a
out
look.
the Winnequa, someone mentioned if you're in Belle Isle, there's the,
Yeah, I have to look at that. I don't think you can, but I can ask.
because right
I
now,
did ask that question before, and I don't remember the answer.
right now, if we're extending.
So you're saying if you
beyond-
just didn't go through the city, you just did GNL, what the impact would be on the
That's
seniors?
just to ask the question
Yeah.
simply.
Yeah.
Because if this C3 route changed from what's
Yeah.
proposed, and there were additional residents that would fall outside the current 3/4 mile proposal,
Right.
could we negotiate in that contract beyond the 3/4 of a mile to include all the residents of Monona for door-to-door service?
I don't think so, but I'll get back to you on that one. I had asked that question before, and I believe it was no.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we asked that before, and they
But
said.
I'll get back to you that, I know we asked that, I don't remember the exact answer.
And remember, it's 3/4 of a mile from the GNL routes too, so we aren't just limited by the C3 route.
And he just wants to know if he just paid extra.
Yeah, I'm just saying, can we pay extra? So if this line
I'll
wasn't
get that-
drawn the way it's drawn.
I'll get that answer for you, but I believe I asked that question before. So many things have gone, I've asked, I don't remember which ones, I don't want to speculate, but I believe you can, but I'll double check.
Okay. Because that's, I think, one of the, like, domino effect of manipulating the current C3 proposed route.
Right.
Is it could jeopardize the paratransit option.
Right.
Yes. Correct, but I would also say that the reason why the Transit Commission felt very strongly about the C3 route, as opposed to just staying on Broadway and Monona. We understand that that's a preference for a lot of people in Monona, but the reason why we feel very strongly about that is not just because of access to to paratransit. It's because when we literally did a heat map, among other things, of the response, first of all, we know that the people that currently use the bus. The notion that the only people that use the bus in Monona are people that live on Broadway or Monona Drive or can walk to Broadway and Monona Drive, which was kind of a prevailing theme in the listening sessions, is inaccurate. In fact, even with our current ridership, it's people, it's not just people, and the people that need and want transit by virtue of the survey live all over the city, including within the C3 route that we're proposing. And
That wasn't, I was saying is if the C3 got manipulated, it would adjust the paratransit. I'm not disagreeing that of why the C3 route was proposed.
Okay.
And the only reason I mentioned the
I just wanted to
GNL.
explain that that's why, that it wasn't just because of the paratransit.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I only use the GNL as an example just to say there'd be a heck of a lot more residents that wouldn't be able to get paratransit.
Right.
Could we pay for it if we wanted it? Like that's,
Got it.
getting to the heart of the city, I think, has been an element of, I think, an easier connection to the regional transport.
Right.
Which I think has been one of the major goals of the commission, for sure. Of how do you get to the heart of the city, but how do you get them within the city and also connect? So I think it's a a wonderful effort at it. I just think there are a lot of questions.
Yeah.
I don't have that answer for you.
Awesome, thank you.
Next meeting.
Yeah, if you think of other questions you'd like to ask Madison Metro, be sure to make a list of them, because
Yeah.
hopefully, is Justin coming next, or do you know who's
I
coming?
can have him come if you guys want.
Somebody who knows what they're talking about.
Yeah. If that's the will of the council, we can always have somebody.
Yeah.
I don't, are you suggesting that they come here?
Well, come on Zoom or whatever, so didn't, Mark said before that they'd be making an appearance at the next council meeting in 2 weeks.
No, they weren't planning
We
on
were
it. You're
talking
talking
about making an
Mass
appearance at the
Transit
transit meeting.
Commission.
Oh, I thought you were talking about having.
No.
Why, I would certainly think Madison would be willing to send someone.
I mean-
Or have someone come via Zoom to answer questions. I can't imagine that would be an issue. I know they're motivated to,
Yeah, I mean, they're always willing to.
yeah, they've come to several transit commission meetings. They're kind of the final word on some of these questions, right?
Yeah, except for it just seems like the negotiation should continue with the transit commission and not with the council.
I would
Right.
ask that they would, if they did come, they'd rather have the questions in advance so they can do their
Yeah,
researches.
that's a good idea.
I mean, because a lot of times he might say, well, I need to talk to so-and-so.
Or maybe you could just send them the questions and report back.
Well, might be the
Yeah.
easiest, so you can do that.
Maybe get them to Mark by like a week
Yeah.
from tonight, and,
We have him sometime.
because I get that the resolution is about continuing to negotiate with Metro, but the council also has some questions about the routes and how things are structured, which those people who have been on the transit commission, have been involved in those discussions, but not everyone else might, have some questions from a different angle or something.
If the council wants to ride along, they could probably set one up too.
Yeah.
I'm up for that.
Yeah, I also think it's important to know that this is a starting point. It's not the final, I mean, a relationship with Madison Metro would go on for years and years and years. And our contract allows flexibility and opt-outs and all that sort of stuff. And renegotiations throughout the years. And you have to start somewhere.
Well, even their own plan, they're constantly
Yeah, exactly.
making changes.
Sun Prairie
so-
has had service for 4 or 5 years, and I think they've had at least 3 route changes.
Right.
Yeah.
Because they do pay attention to concerns,
How's it
complaints.
working? Right.
Yeah, most of the time it's been expanding service.
Yeah.
Not necessarily moving or adjusting it, they've actually been for either extending a route or, we heard at the forum we did with the Madison Chamber, 3 other mayors were asking for more
Yeah.
buses.
Yeah.
So.
Expanding their routes, yeah.
If you could email me by the end of this week, and I'll let Justin know that there'll be questions, so he's aware of it, so I can at least, I'm sure tonight you might think of stuff tomorrow or a couple days. So if there's other questions, then that way I can get them emailed to him.
People could always just attend the transit, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's not, yeah.
Right, but if the questions are going to Madison Metro.
Okay.
I mean, if it's something you guys want, good.
Like the one about this 3/4
Yeah.
rule. The Transit Commission doesn't know the answer to that.
We talked about it, I don't run in my brain the answer. I believe it wasn't.
You're right too, but.
I don't want to give you wrong information.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. We will move on. This will come back on the 20th. Moving on to reports of committees, commissions, et cetera. First of all, any updates or discussion on the DEI efforts?
I'll just say that.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. So this past week, in this room, there was the second public listening session that the DEIB report implementation team was involved in hosting. And members of the public came. The mayor gave a few opening words, as did a couple folks in addition. And then from that point forward, guests were sort of divided into 3 groups, where each of the 3 subcommittees of this committee were presenting their priorities that they had selected from the report and explaining the work that they had done to advance those priorities. And I felt it was well attended, and the only downside was that as part of the committee, I didn't get to hear what the other two groups were talking about and to listen what people were saying about the other two groups. But good feedback was collected in written format, and we will be meeting as a whole committee next week to review the feedback and think about next steps.
Anyone else have any DEI updates? How about sustainability? Nope. Okay, then we will move on to committee reports. Alder DePula.
No updates other than what we talked about tonight, the lit for Public Works, that we meet this week about that.
Alder Holmquist.
No report.
Alder Moore.
No report.
Alder Wood.
No report.
Wow. Alder Rademacher.
Oh, I've always got something to rattle about.
Shockingly, yes.
Teresa's going to talk. So this week, the Sustainability Committee, one of our work groups, will be getting together to start really moving forward with our winter campaign, and then the following week we'll be meeting the committee as a whole. Community media is not going to be meeting this month, but even though they're not meeting as a committee, we've still got folks working on ways to better promote the newsletter, and as always, submit your news to the newsletter. Landmarks meets next week, and tourism had some really great work that came out of that last committee meeting. In particular, thank you, Neil, for doing a lot of work on this. Something I mentioned last time around, for the longest time, tourism just had sort of this annual cycle where everyone sort of applied, and then once a year you found out whether you were getting a grant. That has changed to be more of a quarterly schedule with application deadlines on April 1st, July 1st, and January, whatever. It's multiple times a year. Sorry if I'm not reading this correctly. And then also there was an update of some of our forms, which have been uploaded to the website, and they're available now. So if anyone is considering applying for one of these grants, the information's all there on the website.
Alder Bernstein.
Well, I think there's one thing I'll mention about public safety, and there was the issue of the student who was hit in the signalized intersection. And police, the chief gave us a report how they're working diligently to try to calm traffic there with a lot of police present. And I think there was a little over 70 different times police were assigned to maintain or monitor the situation. It's an ongoing issue, not just the traffic crossing the street, but parking. And I don't know if public safety can fully address all that, but I just thought people would want to know that the police are spending a lot of time trying to address that issue. The other thing is, I'll mention at the last library board meeting, we did go ahead and buy the Core Strengths program. We were thinking about doing it for a year, but we decided to save money by doing it for 6 months, and it will cost us a total of $700. So I think there was some confusion. There was also an item on the agenda for a new fireplace. And that was one of the issues that cropped up with the insurance site visit that just happened a couple of weeks ago and was on the list that Neil emailed us just before the last city council. We're not taking any action on the fireplace issue. I think we got one bid. I hope we get others because I think that was particularly high. But, a reading room, quiet room in the library this winter without a fireplace just won't be as welcoming. So we have a tough issue ahead to try to address that issue. And then lastly, this Thursday at sunset will be the first night of Hanukkah. So I want to wish everybody a happy Hanukkah.
Very nice.
I have some chocolate coins here for anybody who wants to celebrate. That includes maybe some of the people in the audience. So please stop by and get some. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
I guess we'll move on to staff. Chief, do you have anything to share?
Can you hear me, Mayor?
Yep.
Okay, just briefly, in our monthly reports that we submit, you'll find a new section. That new section highlights some of the directed patrol. Thank you, Alder Bernstein, for highlighting that. Directed patrol, the security checks we do, some community engagement, and officer training. We're going to start tracking that sort of month to month, and it's actually a measurable goal that we're paying attention to. And then I'll just say this, although I think we've moved on from the topic, but I can't not say it, so please allow me a little bit more than 5 seconds to do so. As a kid who relied on public transportation, as an adult who took public transportation to get to my job at the city county building, as the police were not provided parking, I value the importance of public transportation. I will say, to Alder Bernstein and Holmquist's point, I appreciate that maybe asking or allowing me to provide input as to some lookouts and some things to keep in mind when making an informed decision on this topic with respect to traffic safety. And as alluded to earlier at staff this morning, we actually discussed several of the items that there were unknown questions to that I'm going to want to keep my finger to the pulse and figure out how I might be able to provide input so that if this does go through, we have a safe plan from my perspective, but also, of course, let us trust the traffic and engineer experts as well. So that's all I have, and thank you for Alder Bernstein again for bringing that up.
Sure. Thank you. City Clerk?
Candidate packets are available in my office. Paperwork is due January 2nd at 5 p.m. Any current alders that are not planning to run, the notification of non-candidacy is due December 22nd at 5 p.m. So please have that in if you're not running.
And former Alder Groupie, here's your chance.
Just hearing the words.
That's it for
We were filling yours out up here.
How about you, Maddie? Someday, I'll be your campaign manager.
Yeah. City
Sounds
Administrator.
like a sweet deal, Addie. You're gonna take her up on it.
Just a reminder that, I guess from a DEI standpoint, that we have many of our community partners are doing some really great things in the community here recently. So if you're looking for an opportunity to get involved, a volunteer effort or a donation effort, now's a great time to reach out to those folks. Personally, I've just been working with the Boys and Girls Club. They just did some really great things at the Ally Drive facility for Thanksgiving. Served a whole bunch of meals. Played some, basketball, which I avoided like playing. I am not. No way am I going in and expressing that amount of effort. Just some really great things. A really great example. Fellow board member is working with the Progress Center for Women. They did a Santa with a black Santa Claus, which was it's really a cool event. If you haven't looked it up, follow Mr. Anthony Cooper. Hopefully no one's any top secret that Anthony plays Santa. He does an absolutely fantastic job, and it really is really cool. It is one of the neater and more inclusive really events that I've really ever seen, and it's really phenomenal. So everybody out there, United Way, obviously it was just Giving Tuesday. There's lots of folks out there who are really looking for help this time of year. So please reach out to your partners and see if there's anything you can do to help out to them. I'm sure they would all love to hear from you, either your time and or your funds to help out. So.
Okay. I guess the only thing I have to announce is that I think the tax bills are going out soon. Right, Neil, we finalized the letter late last
Can't
week.
wait.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah, Merry Christmas.
Yes.
Okay, if there's nothing else. What?
Move to adjourn.
Yeah.
Move to adjourn.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.